King Veric stood before the Galactic Union's council, his towering reptilian form a shadow of its usual dominance. The accusations rained down like poison: illegal resource hoarding, war crimes, treachery against the galaxy itself. His claws clenched the stone beneath him as he listened, knowing every word was a lie, carefully crafted to bring about his downfall. His voice, usually commanding, was strained with disbelief as he responded. "These are falsehoods, fabricated to weaken my empire. I have always served in the interest of my people and the galaxy." But the council, unmoved, continued its assault. Veric's closest allies, those he once trusted with his life, had turned against him. In the back of the chamber, they stood quietly, betraying their king without so much as a glance. Their silence was louder than any words. The Galactic Union wasted no time. Their verdict was swift: exile. Veric would be sent to the wasteland planet Jurtak, a barren rock in the darkest corner of the galaxy. Survival there was considered impossible, and that was exactly the point. It was not just a punishment, it was a death sentence disguised as justice. Veric's people, the mighty Draken, who once feared and revered him, turned their backs as well. The lies of the council spread fast, and soon, the whispers of his supposed crimes were believed by the very ones he had fought to protect. The last thing he saw as he was dragged to the transport ship was his empire dissolving in chaos, his name now spoken with disdain rather than respect. The journey to Jurtak was brutal. Shackled and weakened by the council's energy restraints, Veric had little strength to fight back. He stared out into the cold void of space, his mind replaying the moment of betrayal over and over. He thought of his once great empire, now crumbling under the weight of false accusations. The Union had been planning this for years, he realized. Slowly, methodically, they'd isolated him, discrediting him until no one stood by his side. Jurtak was everything the legends described, a graveyard of shattered rock and suffocating storms. When Veric was thrown onto the surface, the sharp winds cut into his scales, and the thin atmosphere made every breath a battle. The Union didn't even bother to leave supplies. They knew there was no need. No one survived here. Days passed. Veric's strength drained faster than he expected. He foraged what he could, but there was nothing on this planet but dust and despair. He'd been a king, a leader of billions, and now he was crawling through the dirt, struggling for each breath. The solitude was maddening. His mind, once sharp and focused, was filled with regret, anger, and betrayal. He thought of escape, of vengeance, but with each passing hour, that seemed more like a distant dream. His body grew weaker, and he began to accept that the Union's plan was working. They hadn't just sentenced him to die, they wanted him to die forgotten. Then, in the stillness of his fading consciousness, Veric heard something. It was faint, almost imperceptible, a transmission, distorted by the planet's harsh environment. It wasn't Draken. It wasn't the Galactic Union. The sound, though broken and static-filled, was unmistakably human. Veric tried to move, to respond, but his body refused. His once powerful limbs were now heavy with exhaustion, his voice barely a whisper. Yet, for the first time in days, a flicker of hope sparked within him. The humans, of all creatures, had unknowingly reached him. And though he was too weak to answer, that transmission was enough to remind him of one simple truth: he wasn't dead yet. And while he lived, there was still a chance to reclaim everything they had taken from him. The human explorers were a small, tight-knit crew, venturing through remote sectors of space to survey planets for valuable resources. Their mission had led them to Jurtak, a world considered so inhospitable it barely warranted a second glance on most charts. Yet, the strange energy readings that appeared on their instruments made them curious. As their ship descended through the turbulent atmosphere, the crew exchanged uneasy glances. Jurtak had the reputation of being a dead planet. Nothing should be transmitting signals here. They landed cautiously, disembarking into a world of endless rock and dust storms. The readings grew stronger the further they trekked across the harsh terrain. It wasn't long before they saw it, a figure, half buried in the ground, motionless but unmistakably alive. It took them a moment to fully comprehend who it was. The armor, though battered, bore symbols they recognized from history holovids. This was no ordinary being. It was King Veric, the exiled leader whose downfall had been broadcast across the galaxy. The crew stood stunned, their initial shock soon replaced by urgency. Veric was barely alive, his massive frame weakened beyond recognition. The air around him crackled faintly, a sign that whatever energy field had sustained him was about to fail. One of the explorers knelt beside him, taking a deep breath. "It's him," she said quietly, her voice carrying a mixture of awe and disbelief. The others hesitated. Veric was infamous, believed to be guilty of terrible crimes against the galaxy. Yet here he was, not a monster but a dying being abandoned to his fate. His condition told them more than any news report ever had. This was not the death of a tyrant. This was a carefully orchestrated abandonment. Something about the situation didn't add up. Ignoring protocol, they began working quickly. Veric was dehydrated, malnourished, and near death. They provided water, nutrient packs, and used their medical supplies to stabilize him. He stirred slightly, eyes opening with great effort. His gaze was sharp but filled with suspicion as he struggled to comprehend the humans' intentions. For a moment, they wondered if he would refuse their help out of pride or mistrust. One of the explorers, a young medic, spoke softly to Veric, telling him that they meant no harm. Slowly, Veric's tension eased, though his expression remained one of caution. His voice, when it came, was a hoarse whisper. "Why, help me?" The question hung in the air. It was a reasonable one. The humans had no obligation to aid him, especially given his reputation. But the crew, even knowing the risks, didn't hesitate. "Because it's the right thing to do," one of them replied simply. It was a response that seemed to confuse Veric as much as it humbled him. In his world of political power and betrayal, such straightforward compassion was foreign. As they worked on stabilizing him, the crew began piecing together more details. His exile had been public knowledge, but the extent of his suffering had not. This was not the end that a convicted war criminal would receive, this was the result of something deeper, something hidden. The humans exchanged glances, understanding without needing to speak that this was bigger than any of them had realized. Their ship was not equipped for this kind of rescue, and they knew they were risking serious consequences by helping him. The Galactic Union did not tolerate interference in their affairs, especially when it involved someone like Veric. Yet, as they discussed their next steps, the decision was unanimous. They couldn't leave him here to die. They would bring him back to their ship, regardless of the repercussions. They moved quickly, loading Veric onto a makeshift stretcher. He was too weak to protest, though they could sense the conflict within him. To be saved by humans, of all species, was likely not something he had ever imagined. As they reached the ship, the crew reflected on what they had seen. The man lying before them was not the villain the galaxy had been led to believe. There was something else at play, a conspiracy perhaps, and now they were part of it. King Veric's recovery was slow but steady. The humans worked tirelessly, using their advanced medical equipment to help his body heal. Every day, Veric grew stronger. The malnourishment and exhaustion that had weighed him down began to fade, and his powerful frame started to resemble the mighty ruler he once was. His scales regained their sheen, and his movements, once labored and sluggish, became smooth and deliberate again. As his strength returned, so did his sense of purpose. The humans watched him with a mixture of respect and curiosity. They had grown used to hearing the Galactic Union's version of Veric's story, painting him as a tyrant, but the more time they spent with him, the more they realized how different the reality was from the myth. Veric, though proud, was not a ruler driven by cruelty. There was a nobility in his manner, a deep-seated sense of responsibility for his people that clashed with the image of the villain they'd been taught to fear. As Veric recovered, he began to speak more about his past. His voice, still rough from the time spent in exile, carried the weight of a leader who had borne the burdens of an empire. He spoke of the Draken, his people, and how he had led them through times of prosperity and hardship. He described the challenges of ruling a vast and resource-rich empire, always knowing that there were others, like the Galactic Union, who coveted what his people had built. The humans, particularly the crew's leader, couldn't help but ask questions. They wanted to understand how a ruler of such strength had fallen so far. And as Veric revealed more, they began to piece together the larger story. The accusations against him had never made sense, and now they knew why. The charges were a fabrication, designed to discredit him and remove him from power. The Galactic Union had wanted to seize control of the Drakken's resource-rich territory, and Veric, with his unyielding loyalty to his people, had stood in their way. One of the humans, a skilled technician, decided to dig deeper into the Galactic Union's dealings. Using the ship's encrypted databases and information networks, they uncovered a trail of documents, hidden in the bureaucratic layers of the Union's governance. The truth was as damning as they feared. The Union had orchestrated Veric's downfall, not because he had committed crimes, but because his empire was too valuable to be left in his hands. The crew shared their findings with Veric, who listened silently. The revelation didn't shock him, he had suspected as much, but seeing the proof laid out before him only confirmed the depths of the betrayal. The humans, though outraged, were also impressed by Veric's restraint. There was no outburst, no call for immediate revenge. Instead, he considered the next steps carefully, weighing the risks and rewards with the precision of a strategist. In these moments, Veric's respect for the humans grew. Their compassion had saved his life, but it was their resourcefulness, their willingness to seek the truth, and their readiness to challenge the Galactic Union that truly earned his admiration. In the past, Veric had seen humans as a lesser species, one that had not yet proven its worth in the grand scheme of the galaxy. But now, he understood that their strength lay not in their size or power, but in their determination and moral courage. Veric began to speak to the crew more candidly, sharing his insights into the galaxy's politics and the precarious balance of power that had led to his exile. The humans listened, learning from the wisdom of a ruler who had spent his life navigating the treacherous waters of galactic diplomacy. In turn, they shared stories of their own, of human history and the times their people had risen against impossible odds to protect what was right. This exchange deepened the bond between Veric and the humans. They were no longer just his rescuers. They were allies, united by a common cause. Veric could see that these humans were different from the opportunists who had betrayed him. They had no interest in exploiting his empire or using him as a pawn in some larger game. They simply wanted to right the wrongs they had uncovered. As the conspiracy came into full view, Veric knew what had to be done. Exposing the truth was the only way to restore his honor and reclaim his empire. But this would not be a fight of physical strength, it would require careful strategy and precise execution. The Galactic Union was powerful, and taking them on directly would only lead to more destruction. He shared his plan with the humans, outlining a path forward that would involve both diplomacy and subterfuge. They would need to gather allies, build a case, and present their findings in a way that the Union couldn't ignore. It would take time, but Veric was patient. He had been given a second chance, and he wasn't going to waste it. The humans agreed to help, not out of obligation, but because they believed in the mission. Together, they prepared for the battle ahead, one that would change the galaxy forever. Veric and the humans knew that a direct confrontation with the Galactic Union would be suicidal. The Union had fleets of warships and control over vast territories, while they were just a small crew and a dethroned king. But where brute strength failed, cunning could succeed. The humans, ever resourceful, devised a plan to slip past the Union's defenses and infiltrate the Draken homeworld. Their strategy was built on stealth, timing, and exposing the truth in a way that the Union couldn't suppress. Using their ship's advanced hacking capabilities, they managed to tap into the Union's secure communication networks. It wasn't easy, every step risked detection, but the humans were skilled. They sifted through encrypted messages, gathering data and information that would expose the conspiracy Veric had been a victim of. The goal was to release this information across the galaxy, but the timing had to be perfect. If they revealed the evidence too soon, the Union would crush it before it could gain traction. But if they coordinated it with Veric's return, the shockwave would be unstoppable. As their ship neared the Draken homeworld, They contacted a few of Veric's remaining loyalists, those who hadn't been corrupted or swayed by the Union's lies. These were individuals who had served Veric for years and had silently mourned his exile, too afraid to speak out. When they saw him alive, it was as if a flame reignited in their hearts. Veric's survival was a testament to his strength, and the loyalty that had been buried under fear quickly resurfaced. The loyalists were few in number but influential. Veric's return was a rallying point, and with the humans' help, they began to spread the truth. The humans provided technology that allowed them to communicate securely and send messages to key figures within the Draken Empire and beyond. Slowly, the information leaked to trusted allies, and soon, whispers of Veric's return and the Union's deception began to spread like wildfire. Every transmission carried evidence of the Galactic Union's treachery, laying out the plan to exile Veric in order to seize his empire's resources. At the same time, the humans expanded their efforts, hacking into Union-controlled communication channels to send the truth out to the broader galaxy. The Union's crimes weren't just a betrayal of Veric. They represented a dangerous consolidation of power that threatened the freedom of countless species. As these revelations began to surface, the Galactic Union was thrown into disarray. The leadership, realizing that they had been exposed, tried to suppress the information. They censored broadcasts, cut off communication lines, and issued denials, claiming it was all a fabrication orchestrated by a renegade king. But the truth had already gained momentum. With the humans providing technical support and the Draken loyalists spreading the message on the ground, the Galactic Union found itself overwhelmed. Their carefully constructed narrative was falling apart. Word spread rapidly, not just among the Draken people but across the galaxy. Other species, long disillusioned by the Union's heavy-handed control, began to question their own alliances. If the Union could do this to a powerful ruler like Veric, what could they do to smaller, less influential species? Unrest began to grow. The Galactic Union, which had once seemed unshakable, now appeared vulnerable. Systems that had been under their control started to voice dissent. The ripple effect was undeniable. Rumors of rebellion and talk of independence were being whispered in every corner of the galaxy. The Union tried to silence the noise, but the damage had been done. The more they tried to clamp down on the information, the more it spread. Every move they made only seemed to confirm the very conspiracy they were trying to deny. Meanwhile, Veric prepared for the final phase of his return. This wasn't about retaking his throne by force. It was about reclaiming his rightful place with the support of his people and exposing the corruption that had nearly destroyed him. His loyalists, emboldened by the growing tide of support, began to quietly rally others to their cause. Veric's presence, once thought extinguished, was now the symbol of a resistance that the Union could no longer ignore. The humans, watching this unfold, knew their role was pivotal. Their technology, their skills, and their decision to save Veric had set in motion a series of events that no one could have predicted. And now, with the Galactic Union teetering on the edge of collapse, they prepared for the final move. It was no longer just about saving one king, it was about reshaping the balance of power in the galaxy. As the Union scrambled to regain control, they realized too late that they were up against more than just a deposed ruler. They were up against the truth, a truth that had been hidden for too long and had now come to light in a way that could not be undone. Veric's return was no longer a question of if, but when. The galaxy, once blinded by the Union's lies, was beginning to wake up, and there would be no going back. With the galaxy now aware of the Galactic Union's corruption, King Veric's moment of truth arrived. Public sentiment had shifted. People no longer saw him as the tyrant the Union had painted him to be. He stepped out into the public, standing tall before his people once more, his figure a reminder of the strength he had always possessed. His survival alone was a symbol of his resilience, but it was the truth he now carried that would seal his redemption. Veric's speech, delivered across all networks, was not one of vengeance but unity. He addressed not only his Draken Empire but the galaxy at large, acknowledging the deep-rooted issues of corruption and deceit that had nearly destroyed him. He spoke of justice, of the need for a new order where power was not held by those who could manipulate and oppress, but by those who would wield it responsibly. His message was clear: no longer would strength be defined by military might or territorial dominance, but by alliances built on trust, mutual respect, and shared goals. The days of ruling through fear were over. But perhaps the most unexpected part of his address was his open acknowledgement of humanity. Veric publicly recognized the humans who had saved him, calling them the key to his survival and, ultimately, his return to power. He praised their ingenuity, their courage, and above all, their capacity for compassion. Despite being a relatively minor species in the galaxy's grand hierarchy, they had done what no one else had. They had seen the truth and acted on it, risking their own lives and reputations in the process. In a stunning declaration, Veric announced the formation of a formal alliance between the Draken Empire and humanity. This wasn't just an offer of mutual defense or trade, it was an unprecedented gesture of trust. Veric made it clear that from this moment forward, humanity would play a critical role in his empire's future. Their strategic minds and their moral compass would be integral in shaping the Draken's new direction, one that would steer them away from the path of oppression and greed the Union had tried to lead them down. The Galactic Union, now fully exposed for its role in the conspiracy, had no choice but to back down. Their attempts to quash the growing rebellion had failed, and the evidence against them was irrefutable. Veric's return, coupled with the support of humanity, left them politically and militarily outmatched. The Union's leadership, once seen as unassailable, now found themselves isolated, struggling to retain control over their territories as more and more species questioned their legitimacy. As Veric solidified his power and reformed his empire, the galaxy's power structure began to shift. No longer was the Union the dominant force. The alliance between humans and the Draken was the new focal point of galactic politics. Other species, previously indifferent or fearful of the humans, now saw them in a different light. Some viewed this new partnership with curiosity, wondering how the humans, once considered a minor player, had risen to such prominence. Others viewed them with trepidation, realizing that humanity's adaptability and strategic prowess made them a force to be reckoned with. Veric's empire, rejuvenated by this new alliance, began to rebuild. No longer isolated, the Draken people thrived under a new banner of unity and cooperation. With humanity at their side, they turned their focus toward fostering peace and stability, offering their strength as a deterrent to further corruption and tyranny. The galaxy, still reeling from the fallout of the Union's treachery, looked to Veric's new empire as a beacon of hope. For the humans, the alliance with Veric was more than just a political victory. It was proof that their species, despite their modest beginnings, had the potential to shape the galaxy in ways no one had foreseen. They were no longer seen as mere explorers or survivors on the galactic stage. Through their actions, they had demonstrated that their strength lay not only in their technological advancements or their capacity for war but in their ability to forge connections, to see potential where others saw only risk, and to act with both heart and mind. As the galaxy adjusted to this new reality, Veric reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From the brink of death on a desolate planet to the seat of power once more, his resurrection had been made possible not through sheer will alone, but through the intervention of those who saw him not as a fallen king but as a life worth saving. Humanity's role in his redemption had been vital, and he would not forget it. Veric, now restored to his throne, stood stronger than ever. His empire, once on the verge of collapse, was now poised to lead the galaxy into a new era. And beside him, the humans, once disregarded by the galaxy's more powerful species, had earned their place as trusted allies. Together, they had not only reshaped the balance of power but had shown the galaxy that true strength came from unity, from the bonds formed between species willing to stand together for a better future.